The lesson is based on opening up the textbook, and that would mean that students are being asked to challenge or to look more specifically at the textbook and regard it not as the be-all, end-all of history, but regard it as something that can be argued with. Well, let's talk. Let's get into this. How do textbook authors decide what to include or not to include? Raphael.
They take the winning side, usually. I mean, like, you know, if like, for World War II, they're not going to write about how, like, all the good things Nazi Germany did, because Nazi, if it, you know, I'm not saying it did, but because they don't believe in it, and, you know, America is totally against the Nazis.
So you're suggesting that there's some bias in textbook writing, that it's, do you believe that's written by the winners, that history books are written by the winners? Okay. Casey.
And I bet that, like, in a German textbook, they probably skate over a few of the Holocaust moments.
All right, so an interesting idea would be to, or something that we could do is compare a German textbook of how it deals with a subject like World War II with an American textbook that deals with the same subject. And Casey, you're speculating that they would be different in that maybe the German textbook wouldn't have as much information about the Nazi atrocities and things like that. So the first step in the opening up the textbook lesson was to examine what does their textbook say about this incident. And so students were given a selection from their textbook about the event. And students were asked to think about and write down what sources they felt perhaps were left out of the textbook, whose voices they would like to hear, in addition to what the textbook authors showed in their account. Whose voice do you feel is missing from all of this? Or who would you like to hear more from?
Well, if we could get a bit of perspective from the Viet Cong rebels they were actually hunting, and maybe they could say if these operations were actually targeting them or civilians.
Okay, so maybe we want to find out some more from the Viet Cong. They might have some more on-the-ground knowledge of what kinds of things were military and what kinds of things went beyond being just a regular military operation. Is that what I hear, Nick? Yeah. Okay.
Or somebody said that it wasn't an isolated incident, so maybe, like, other situations where something similar occurred and, like, the differences between them. So the experiences of other U.S. veterans who did similar things.
Other soldiers. Okay. Other U.S. soldiers specifically. All right, Mike.
The soldiers that were in it with Lieutenant Colley, because I mean they killed 22 people, and like Colley probably wasn't the only one who shot someone. Like I want to hear from like the other people who were actually there.
Eventually, they were led to think about, well, the American public. What was the American public thinking as these events came to light? In addition, students were asked to think about, well, who was the author of the textbook? And one student was given an actual textbook to identify, were these historians, were they hired by Prentice Hall? And so students were asked to do some sourcing and think about the validity of the source